All right, today we're going to break down the ethical backbone of the entire investment world, the CFA Code of Ethics. But before we dive into all the rules, let's start with a really basic question. In the world of finance, what do you think is the single most valuable currency?
It's trust. That's it. Simple, right? But it's so powerful and absolutely essential. Seriously, without trust, the whole system just grinds to a halt.
Okay, so if trust is the currency, the big question is how do you protect it? How do you actually build a system where everyone, I'm talking individual clients, the general public, everybody can feel confident that finance pros are going to do the right thing? Well, there's a really great way to think about it. It's basically like the Hippocratic Oath, but for finance. A serious promise to act with integrity and always put other people's interests first. And that promise, it's not just some handshake deal. It's all laid out in the CFA Institute's Code of Ethics. And let's be clear, this isn't some friendly suggestion. It is the official blueprint for building and maintaining that trust across the industry. The whole thing is really built on 3 foundational pillars, and we're going to walk through them. First is your own professionalism. Second is the integrity of the market itself. And third is your fundamental duty to your clients. So let's jump right into pillar 1, professionalism. This is the bedrock, right? It all starts with you, your personal integrity, and your professional competence. And the absolute baseline here is pretty simple. You've got to know the law. Standard IA makes it crystal clear that it's on you to understand and follow all the applicable rules. In this world, saying "I didn't know" is just not an excuse. Now, this brings up a really important point. What happens when different laws or rules conflict? The principle is actually pretty straightforward. You always have to follow the more strict rule. So if the local law is tougher, that's what you do. If the CFA standard is tougher, you follow that one. You always aim for the highest ethical bar, period. But, being a professional isn't just about following the letter of the law. Standard IB gets into something deeper: independence and objectivity. This means your professional judgment has to be your own. It can't be compromised by pressure from anyone, not your boss, not a client, not even another department in your own firm. And trust me, that pressure can get really intense. Let's look at a real-world dilemma faced by an analyst named Walter Fritz. He's done his homework on a company, and his analysis says the stock is overvalued. The problem? He knows that if he publishes a negative report, it could really damage a big relationship for another part of his firm. So what happens? The firm's investment banking division starts leaning on him, telling him to soften his negative report to protect their business relationship. But this is where the standard is so important. It's crystal clear. Fritz's analysis must remain objective. He has to ignore that internal pressure and publish the independent research that his clients deserve. Okay, so that's professionalism. Now let's move on to the second pillar, which zooms out a bit. This isn't just about your own actions anymore. It's about protecting the fairness of the entire system for everyone. It's about market integrity. And the absolute cornerstone of market integrity is Standard 2A. This one's all about what's called material non-public information. Or, in plain English, no insider trading. It's simple. If you have important information that the public doesn't, you cannot trade on it or tell anyone else who might. And this is where things can go wrong really, really fast. Check out this story. A company president, Frank Barnes, decides to accept a tender offer. He tells his daughter, who then tells her husband, Staple. And what does Staple do? He picks up the phone and tells his stockbroker. You can just see how this stuff spreads like wildfire, right? Staple broke the rule by passing on the tip, and his broker broke the rule by trading on it. The takeaway here is huge. It doesn't matter how far down the chain you are. Acting on insider info erodes the very trust that makes fair markets possible.
All right, that brings us to our third and final pillar. And honestly, you could argue this is the most important one of all: your direct duty to your clients.
At the very heart of this pillar is Standard 3A, which lays out your fiduciary duty. And that boils down to one single, incredibly important thing. The client's interests come first. Not second, not kind of tied with your own, first, always. End of story. So what happens when your client's interests and your employer's interests are in direct conflict? This is a tough spot. Take the case of Julian Wiley, an investment manager. His firm is facing a hostile takeover, so his managers come to him and tell him to use the employee pension plan he manages to start buying up the company's stock. The critical question you have to ask is, whose money is it anyway? It's not the company's money. It belongs to the pension plan participants. Those are Wiley's clients. By using their funds to benefit his employer, he directly violated his duty of loyalty. He prioritized his company over the very people he was hired to protect. So when you put all three of these pillars together, professionalism, market integrity, and duty to clients, what you end up with is something much more than just a rule book. It's more like an ethical compass. And that really is the key takeaway here. The CFA standards aren't just a simple checklist you can tick off. They are a framework for judgment, designed to help you navigate all the messy, gray areas you're going to face in complex, real-world decisions. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. Because out there in the real world of competing interests and immense pressure, the lines are going to get blurry. It's inevitable. So the real question is, when they do, what guides your compass?